If I could only think of how to cut you away, I wouldn't be so frightened or scared to be enlightened. It's kind of difficult to keep my mind on a day that I didn't really mind it. It's in my face, I'll find it. The fields of colors bleeding and it's so far from home. The thoughts keep coming forward, I wish I wasn't so bored. Does it really matter if I'm dying alone? I often try to fake it, what's in my face I'll take it.
I am the devil. I am the Lord Satan from the netherworld, ruler of the damned and eternal king of hell. Even I, the master of deceit, can only stomach so much bullshit from the mainstream media and indie grifters. That's why I tune in to Morning Extra with Uncle Warren, because he eliminates my competition, and also because I know I'm gonna see that motherfucker soon.
Deo, Deo.
Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake is all go down. Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake is all go down. Corrosion to her thighs, erosion of her pride. Baby's got a shooter. Baby's got corrosion now. Corrosion now. Baby's got it.
What? Good morning. It's Friday, possibly Saturday in some parts of the world. So, happy Saturday to you guys too. Yeah, it is Friday here on the ExtraBulla Presents Morning Extra. I'm your host, Uncle Warren, and the thing. And of course it is that special time of year.
Fuck you, everybody. Good night.
I really do love this time of year. October is probably my favorite month out of the whole shooting match. Because my birthday's in January, and January is usually cold and barren, much like myself. Because no, I could have kids. I just don't want them. We got everybody in the house here. Choosy with his manifesto at the beginning there. I'm sure there's going to be more of that. What's up, buddy? Global Solidarity is here. Rick, our concierge of hell, hanging out with us this morning. Smoke 'em or the weeds. Of course, that's our buddy Yona. What's up, Yona? Good to see you. We haven't. Yona's been busy on the rumbles there with his music show, and doing a good job over there. I try to catch a show every once in a while when I can. In fact, I need to do a little bit of business here. Hang on just a second. It's our tradition here. No, we don't like white people in here. White names. We got Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show. Good to see you, buddy. And special announcement for him later on in the show. Of course, Miguel is here. And Max and Nightbot. Nightbot. I think that's it for right now, but I'm sure some more will filter in soon enough. So yes, today is Friday, and before we get to the news, of course, we want to make sure that you know about our buddy Chanda, who is dealing with lung cancer right now, and she needs funding to help her with that. So if you can go to the link below to her GoFundMe, spare a couple bucks, I'm sure she would appreciate it. Us too. If not, if you can share the link out at least, please do so. Every little bit helps. So, CBC voter, happy Friday to you too. What is it? 3:16 a.m. Saturday, October 5th, time in Wellington, New Zealand. That's according to our internal time clock, Global Solidarity. Thanks, man. It is. So it's like they're well into Saturday over there. So if you're in New Zealand, happy Saturday and fuck your Friday. Oh my goodness. I, of course, I'm not prepared at all here. I tend to get a little bit on the anxiety-ridden side whenever I'm doing this show because I like to torture myself. There's all kinds of bells and whistles that go along with this show, and it's just like everything else. One little thing breaks and the whole thing goes teets up. D, good to see you around the world with D and friends. Your show's going to be on at 9 p.m. this evening, as always. Be sure to check her out if you're not subscribed. Vera says, no beard, you look handsome. What was I chopped liver before? What are you talking about? No, I sometimes I like to look a little bit younger, because I'll be walking down the street and I'll look into a shop window and I'll see my reflection and I go, oh, Jesus Christ, it's crackhead Santa. What the hell's that? But thank you, Vera. I appreciate you. You're very sweet. Yeah, but I probably will grow this out for the Santa Claus stuff in December. So we'll see how that works out. Yeah. So anyway, we have a lot to get to today as usual, and of course, we can't have nice things happen to us. We're going to have to yeah. So let's just get to it. So the ILA suspended their strike. They won a tentative deal with a 62% wage boost, so good for them. But yeah, so the massive long strike that some of us were teats. Some of us were hoping for, that's probably not going to happen. So the union representing East and Gulf Coast dock workers suspended its strike yesterday after reaching a tentative agreement with shipping giants that reportedly includes a 62% wage boost over 6 years. The International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA, said in a joint statement with the U.S. Maritime Alliance that the union would suspend its strike until January 15th so the two sides can, quote, return to the bargaining table to negotiate all other outstanding issues. Effective immediately, all current job actions will cease and all work covered by the master contract will resume, the statement added. The tentative deal followed 3 days on the picket line during which dock workers who are essential to the functioning of the U.S. economy, yeah, to highlight that there, the essential to the functioning of the U.S. economy, cast their fight as a critical struggle against multinational corporations that raked in huge profits during the COVID-19 pandemic and enriched their investors as wages failed to keep pace with inflation. These companies, they don't give a fuck about us, Harold Daggett, the ILO's president, said from a picket line in New Jersey earlier this week. Well, we're going to show them they're going to have to give a fuck about us because nothing's going to move without us, except for a 62% pay increase. According to one estimate, the dozens of ports affected by the strike handle a combined 25% of the U.S. international trade. AP reported yesterday the two sides reached a tentative deal after the ports sweetened their wage offer from about 50% over 6 years to 62%. The union originally sought a 77% raise, but in recent days, Daggett said the ILA would pursue a 61.5% raise for workers over the course of a new contract. Daggett rejected the shipping industry's previous wage offers as insulting. Under the contract that expired earlier this week, starting pay for dock workers was $20 an hour. He's like, well, $20 an hour is pretty good, but if you're a dock worker, that's some back-breaking work. That's a spit in the face. Any final agreement must be ratified by union members who also demanded protections from automation and other benefit improvements. Reuters reported that automation is among the key issues that remain unresolved. So I guess that between now and the 15th, they'll deal with that. Hang on just a second. I always think I'm set up and then I'm not set up because reasons. All right. But a little, like we said, they suspended their strike. And for the most part, they were striking, but they were still, working with the military, loading ships and cruise ships too. They were taking care of cruise ships as well. Yes, Rick, ILA should stop all shipments to Israel. right? Which made, like I said, it was a kind of strike because they were still feeding the military-industrial complex. So really, were you on strike? And it was only 3 days. You got your money, and I guess that's all that matters to them. But according to this report, though, the shipping giant Maersk was getting a little piece of the action too. Amid port strike, note that shipping giant Maersk spent $6.5 billion on stock buybacks. This is from Jessica Corbett at Common Dreams. Amid a strike, the dock workers along the eastern Gulf Coast argue is about corporate greed versus worker rights. A watchdog group is highlighting how at least one shipping giant on the other side of the labor battle has recently poured billions of dollars into stock buybacks. Around 45,000 members of the ILA walked off the job on Tuesday after unsuccessful negotiations with USMX, a shipping industry group that includes Maersk. In an analysis released Wednesday, Accountable.USA pointed out that as part of Maersk's $12 billion stock buyback program, the Danish shipping company has spent $6.5 billion buying back nearly 3 million Class A and B shares as of January of this year. When companies pursue stock buybacks, also called share repurchases, they reduce the number of shares available on the market, which inflates earnings per share, enriching shareholders. The practice has fueled calls to hike the U.S. corporate tax rate. Maersk paused its buybacks in February. CNBC reported at the time that the company flagged high uncertainty in its 2024 earnings outlook amid Red Sea disruptions and an oversupply of shipping vessels. Still, Accountable.us framed what Maersk has done so far as proof that the shipping giant and fellow USMX members have the capital to end the strike. And apparently that was the case, as Daggett, the ILO president Harold Daggett, asserted this week. The same foreign-owned shipping giants that say they can't find the money for fair wages and treatment of American port workers managed to find billions of dollars to enrich a small group of wealthy investors after riding a wave of record profits, said Liz Zelnick, director of the Economic Security and Corporate Power Program at Accountable U.S. in a statement. When the big shipping industry was faced with a choice, share its success with U.S. workers that delivered it or go overboard with greed, its executives clearly chose the latter. Until their backs were against the wall, that is. The watchdog also took aim at Costco Shipping Holdings, which last year announced plans to buy back up to 101 million of its A shares, with plans for further buybacks after reporting an industry-beating profit of $2.7 billion in the first half of 2023. So that was all part of the game there. You can't afford to you can't afford to pay for your employees, but you can buy back shares. Nobody's business, right? Yeah. So, and like I said, we were really hoping that this would be something a little bit more on the beefier side as far as lasting longer than 3 days, because you could see people were sweating. These people in the upper ranks that depend on imports and exports too, really were kind of fucked with them striking. And that was just the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. The West Coast wasn't even involved. But can you imagine if all three had struck for a long time and not just asked for worker wages or wages, but also stuff that actually benefits all Americans, because they are the heartbeat of capitalism in this country. But you see what happens there. Meanwhile, turning our attention to Hurricane Helene and the devastation that's going on, particularly in North Carolina and Tennessee. There's some anger there too. Tennessee, the Tennessee National Guard's or the State Guard's Middle East North Africa mission helping Israel amid hurricane havoc. This is from a few days ago, but it's still pertinent. The U.S. announcement of the Tennessee National Guard Task Force deployment to the Middle East has sparked widespread criticism, with many arguing that they would be better tackling the state's ongoing hurricane disaster. Last Thursday, Tennessee's Department of Ministry said that over 700 soldiers would leave their home state later on Saturday to receive training at Fort Bliss, Texas, over the coming weeks before being deployed to Kuwait. According to the military, the initiative will span a year and is reported to be in support of the U.S. Central Command's Operation Spartan Shield. That sounds like a condom, where U.S. forces have been defending Israel from potential attacks by Iran. Our service members have spent the last year conducting rigorous training and preparing to deploy in support of Operation Spartan Shield, Jason Tomberlin, commander of the Tennessee Task Force, said in a statement. However, many have since expressed fears that deploying reinforcements amid escalations in the region would come at the expense of addressing the Hurricane Helene crisis, which has killed well over 90 people across 6 states, including Tennessee. That will update those numbers here in just a second. Millions more have faced power outages and destroyed roads, with calls for a better emergency response to the storm. Meanwhile, members of the Tennessee National Guard are being deployed to the Middle East while a flood destroys their neighborhoods, one user wrote in a post on social media platform Tweeters. Instead of all hands on deck, as first responders, they'll be on a base in Kuwait for the sake of apartheid Israel. America needs to be angry. Several more have taken to social media to additionally blame Sleepy Joe Biden and drunk soccer mom Kamala Harris for their handling of Hurricane Helene and demanded a postponement of the Tennessee National Guard's deployment. The state simply does not have the resources to handle all of this now that their National Guard is overseas. Independent journalist Nick Sorter wrote on the tweeters, this YouTuber Chris Hall and I just delivered 50 pizzas to first responders in the hospital in Newport, Tennessee. It's the first hot, fresh food they've had since the storm. The U.S. has reiterated its stance to maintain its robust military presence in defense of Israel amid its nearly year-long bombing campaign in Gaza and is widening war across the region. And then John Kirby from the National Security spokesperson says Israel's right to eliminate any threats like babies and hospital workers and that sort of thing, yada, yada, yada. So they really need the help in Tennessee and in the region as well, because the death toll is over 200 now from Helene. More than 200 people are confirmed dead after Helene carved a path of destruction through several southeastern states. Officials said yesterday, making it the second deadliest storm to hit the U.S. mainland in more than half a century. Compilation of official figures by AFP confirms 200 fatalities across North and South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and Virginia. More than half the deaths were in flood-ravaged North Carolina. Me and Willie Bragg were talking about that the other night when he was on ExtraBulla Live, and because he's from North Carolina, and we were talking about the devastation. A lot of rural areas out there don't exactly have the best infrastructure anyway, and a lot of mudslides and flooding and stuff. It's keeping a lot of people from getting help out there. But don't worry, they're going to get $750. Yeah, that's, we're going to talk about FEMA in a little bit too. Helene is the deadliest on the U.S. mainland since 2005's Hurricane Katrina, which killed close to 14,000 people. Despite hundreds of rescues across 6 states and an enormous response, including more than 10,000 federal personnel assisting local responders, the death toll from the sprawling storm is expected to rise, with many residents still unaccounted for in a mountainous region known for its pockets of isolation. We're continuing to find survivors. North Carolina's Buncombe County, the epicenter of the tragedy, where more than 60 people are confirmed dead, said in its latest update, adding, there are residents still cut off from the outside world due to landslides and destroyed bridges. Thoughts and prayers continue to go out to the families of those. Yeah, said Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, told a briefing in the state, thoughts and prayers. No money, but thoughts and prayers. U.S. President Joe Biden was undertaking a second straight day of visits to affected states, traveling Thursday to Florida, where Helene blew into the state's northern Gulf Shore last week as a powerful Cat 4 hurricane, wind speeds of 140 miles per hour. And it's going to be more people that's going to be that's going to be found, unfortunately. And it's sad. Good morning, Kate. It's good to see you. It's sad because, we got to keep sending that money to Israel and Ukraine, for reasons. So accordingly, apparently FEMA is going to be broke soon. Like I said, we can spend all this money overseas, but on our own people, what are you doing? What are you smoking? Hurricane Helene brings push for more FEMA funding. There's this asshole. I think he looks like a villain from the 1960s Batman. Widespread destruction caused by Hurricane Helene is bringing FEMA funding into the spotlight, and there may not be enough money to get through the rest of hurricane season. There's more coming, too. There's 2 in the Atlantic right now. An official this week said that while the agency has enough funds to deal with the immediate response to this storm, that's $750 for all those folks out there, because I'm sure that's going to help rebuild their homes. It could run out of funds before the season ends on November 30th. Frank Matranga of FEMA told reporters yesterday that Helene is going to be a very expensive disaster. Yeah, we talked about that. Probably $10 billion to $100 billion, depending on where you're at. We're keeping track of how much funding Congress has given us and how much we project to burn over the coming days. He added that FEMA will ensure Congress is aware of the status of our funding and take action where appropriate, but Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas warned this week that FEMA will run out of money before hurricane season is over. Close to $1 trillion military budget, but FEMA's going to be out of money. We're meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We're expecting another hurricane hitting. Mayorkas told reporters on Wednesday FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season. As of Monday, Joe Biden was weighing whether he needed to call Congress back into session. Where the fuck are they? Were they on vacation? To approve more funds, lawmakers aren't due to return to Washington, D.C. until November 12th. That's something else we need to change, too. If you're going to work, you're going to fucking work. You're going to be in Washington doing the shit, like helping people during a fucking hurricane crisis. That is something I may have to request, but no decision has been made, he said. However, such an ask might prove complicated, as House Speaker and Disney character Mike Johnson said, there isn't a need for lawmakers to return early. Congress has previously provided the funds needed to respond, so we will make sure that those resources are appropriately allocated, Johnson said with a dick in his ass. And he told the New York Times that there's no necessity for Congress to come back. We wouldn't even conceivably have the request ready before we get back in November, Johnson said. Yeah, if you were there now, you'd have the fucking request ready. But no, you're on your fucking vacation. But on Tuesday, a bipartisan group of senators from states impacted by the storm urged their colleagues to be ready to return to Congress if needed. Although the true level of devastation is still unfolding, it is clear that Congress must act to meet the unmet needs in our states and address the scope and scale of destruction experienced by our constituents, they wrote in a letter. This may even require Congress to come back in October. Oh, not October, not Rocktober. Why are you?
Fuck you, everybody. Good night.
Yeah, so even in Rocktober, get your ass back to work. To ensure we have enough time to enact legislation for the end of this calendar year. Motherfuckers, right? And I take this a little personally too, because I grew up in an area on the Gulf Coast that would get its fair share of hurricanes, and I had people down there during Katrina, and we saw how sloppy that was under Bush, his reaction to it. So, I take it a little personal, just maybe I shouldn't, but, that's just little old me. Meanwhile, overseas, South Sudan is dealing with, a lot of weather disasters as well. South Sudan to declare national disaster as floods devastate communities. See, and just those folks. South Sudan is poised to declare a national disaster as catastrophic floods have ravaged large parts of the country, displacing nearly 200,000 people and causing widespread destruction to essential infrastructure, including schools and hospitals. In an extraordinary cabinet meeting chaired by President Salva Kiir Mayardit on Thursday, the Council of Ministers approved the disaster declaration for flood-affected areas. President Kiir is expected to issue the formal order soon following the cabinet's endorsement. Deputy Minister of Information, Communication Technology, and Postal Service, Dr. Jacob Maiju Karak, confirmed that the flooding, which began in July, has affected more than 772,000 people across 38 countries and the Abyei administrative area. Out of those, approximately 198,000 have been confirmed as displaced. The floods have impacted both people and animals, with significant damage to schools, hospitals, and other critical infrastructure in states like Jonglei, Upper Nile, Unity, Warrap, Northern Bahr el Ghazal, and Abyei. Karak told reporters after the meeting. Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management Minister Albino Akel Atak had earlier urged the cabinet to recommend the disaster declaration, which was unanimously approved. The move will enable South Sudan to mobilize resources from international donors to aid in relief efforts. Meanwhile, Taiwan is shutting down for a second day as Typhoon Krathon. I wanted to call this Kraken so bad, but it's Krathon. And it's not Creighton, like that stuff that people think is weed, but it's not. So Taiwan shuts down for a second day as Typhoon Krathon lands. Taiwan shut down schools and offices for a second day yesterday as Typhoon Krathon pounded the island before its expected landfall, leaving 2 dead and more than 100 injured. Krathon packing sustained wind speeds of 126 kilometers, 78 miles per hour, and gusts of up to 162 kilometers per hour, was 30 kilometers southwest of southern Kaohsiung at 10 a.m. Local time, according to the Central Weather Administration. The center of the typhoon was forecast to make landfall around noon near southern Tainan, Kaohsiung, or Pingtung. The time has been delayed as it's moving very slowly, forecaster Chang Chun-Yao said. While CWA Chief Cheng Chia-Ping said Wednesday that the typhoon was expected to weaken rapidly after landing, residents of Kaohsiung were urged to take shelter. Yes, so everybody's getting a taste of the weather around the world. And so, we were talking about the strike earlier and how they were still loading weapons onto military ships, and how we have no problem funding genocide in Israel while people in North Carolina are drowning. So what are the fruits of those funds that we send? Well, 18 killed in Israeli strike on West Bank's Tulkarem refugee camp. That's right, they're bombing refugee camps because the refugees it's self-defense. These refugees, man, they're attacking left and right? At least 18 people have been killed in an Israeli air attack on the Tulkarem refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Ministry of Health said the Israeli military said that its fighter jets had carried out the attack yesterday in coordination with Israel's internal security service, the Shin Bet, the shit bet. The army said in a later statement that it had targeted the head of Hamas's infrastructure in Tulkarem. The Palestinian group did not immediately comment on the Israeli military's claim. Camp official Faisal Salama told the AFP news agency that the strike had been carried out with an F-16 fighter. Footage verified by Al Jazeera's Sanad fact-checking agency showed scenes of devastation in the camp located northwest of Nablus in the north of the West Bank. Also, a cafe was bombed there too, killing a family. I'm pretty sure they were terrorists too, right? Israel rocks Beirut with huge attack and cuts off main Lebanon-Syria road. So the fight, the fun never ends in Israel when it comes to murdering people. Huge explosions rocked the Lebanese capital's southern suburbs overnight, shaking the ground and sending plumes of smoke into the skyline. Residents in Beirut said the bombardment was so intense that car alarms went off and buildings shook as Israeli fighter jets pounded the densely populated outskirts, including the international airport's perimeter, You may have seen some of the video on the tweeters about that or elsewhere. It was pretty bad explosions. A source close to Lebanon's Hezbollah group told the AFP news agency that Israel conducted 11 consecutive raids in what has been described as its most violent attack so far on Beirut. The Israeli military has not issued an official statement, and Hezbollah has not commented. Israeli media reported that Hezbollah's Hashem Safadine, a possible successor to leader Hassan Nasrallah, who was killed in an Israeli attack last week, was the target of the air raids. Israel's military said today that it had eliminated the head of Hezbollah's communications network, Mohammed Rashid Sakafi, as conducting a precise intelligence-based strike in Beirut yesterday. Hezbollah did not immediately comment on Safaki's fate. And Israel kills at least 28 on-duty medics in 24 hours in Lebanon, according to the World Health Organization. Of course, medics, those terrorists helping people get well. At least 28 on-duty medics have been killed by Israel in Lebanon in the past 24 hours, according to the WHO. No, not that WHO. The WHO's Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who said yesterday, that guy said during an online news briefing that many health workers are not reporting for duty and have fled the areas where they work due to bombardments, demanding improved safeguards for health workers. This is severely limiting the provision of mass trauma management and continuity of health services, according to Ghebreyesus. I guess that's how you say that. And he noted that owing to flying constraints, the Global Health Organization will be unable to send a large scheduled consignment of trauma and medical supplies to the nation on Friday. Dr. Abdinasar Abu Bakr, who's representative of Lebanon, told the briefing that all of the healthcare personnel murdered in the previous day had been on duty assisting the injured. Abu Bakr explained that although hospitals have been evacuated, I think what I can say for now is the capacity for mass casualty management exists, but it's just a matter of time until the system actually reaches its limit. The Lebanese Health Ministry has reported that Israeli aggression on various Lebanese areas has killed close to 2,000 people and wounded almost 9,400 others since the beginning of the Israeli aggression on the country since October 8th of last year, and its expansion about a week ago. Lebanon's caretaker health minister, Firas Abiad, announced that the 1,974 death toll includes 127 children and 261 women, in addition to the 9,384 wounded. Yeah. So, Israel making use of all that money that we're sending them to blow the shit out of innocent people. Meanwhile, Hezbollah is, they had that big rocket attack earlier this week with the 200 something missiles being sent over. Are repelling attempts by Israel to invade. So they repelled 6 infiltration attempts by Israel. Hezbollah announced yesterday it had successfully repelled 6 infiltration attempts by Israeli forces into southern Lebanon. The group also launched 19 attacks on northern Israel. On September 23rd, Israel launched its most intense and extensive offensive on Lebanon in nearly 20 years. According to official Lebanese data, Israeli airstrikes have since killed at least 1,120 people, including women and children, injuring a little over 3,000 and displaced around 1.2 million people. Following Iran's retaliatory missile attack on Israel on Tuesday in response to Israel's assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and Secretary General of Lebanon's Hezbollah Hassan Nasrallah, air raid sirens have been sounding at an unprecedented rate across Israel due to Hezbollah's intensified barrage of rockets, drones, and artillery shells targeting military sites and settlements. Israeli security authorities have, however, restricted reports on human and material losses, according to observers. We'll talk about that later, too. Hezbollah announced a series of successful operations against Israeli occupation forces in southern Lebanon, reporting significant damage. According to statements released on Telegram, they detonated explosives targeting Israeli soldiers and launched rocket strikes on military positions and a tank, causing heavy losses. Hezbollah fighters targeted several Israeli positions, asserting direct hits in most cases. This escalation follows Israel's announcement on Wednesday evening of the death of 8 soldiers, including 3 officers, in an ambush by Hezbollah fighters during an attempted incursion into southern Lebanese towns. So the Iraqi resistance is getting in the mix too, deploying new advanced aircraft to hit Israeli targets. The Islamic resistance in Iraq announced that its fighters attacked yesterday an Israeli target in the south of occupied Palestine via an aircraft with advanced capabilities deployed for the first time. In a statement, the Islamic resistance affirmed that its fighters will continue to use this technology to strike enemy strongholds with increasing intensity. The resistance said the operation was in continuation of our approach to resist the occupation in support of our people in Palestine and Lebanon, and in response to the massacres committed by the usurping entity against civilians, including children, women, and the elderly. Al-Mayadeen's information highlights that the new aircraft deployed by the Iraqi resistance enjoys higher flight speed and huge explosive capabilities, and is designed for maneuvering to bypass air defenses for quick infiltration. See, that's the thing that the Iron Dome is having trouble with. It's like conventional, just sticking around missiles. They seem to have no problem with that, but hypersonic missiles and these drones, well, not so much. According to the information, the aircraft infiltrated the occupied territory from new borders unexpected by the Israeli occupation military. In a related context, Abu Ali al-Askari, the head of the Iraqi Hezbollah Brigade's Security Bureau, warned that if an energy war breaks out, the world will lose 12 million barrels of oil daily. Yeah, better learn how to ride a bicycle. Either everyone enjoys resources or everyone is deprived, he posted on his Telegram channel. So that is the Iraqi resistance. Meanwhile, the actual Iraqi forces, not so much. Iraqi forces decide to keep out of Israel's battles with Hezbollah and Iran because, they're puppets of the United States. The Iraqi political and armed forces affiliated to Tehran have decided to distance themselves from Israel's battles with Hezbollah and Iran, fearing that expanding the growing Middle Eastern wars could ruin Iraq and their own positions. Iraqi officials and leaders of Iranian-backed armed factions told Middle East Eye that the focus instead will be on providing humanitarian aid and financial support to civilians affected by Israel's war on Lebanon. No U.S. interests or military bases in Iraq or Syria will be targeted by Iraqi armed factions until further notice, commanders said. Over the past year, Israel's onslaught Gaza has drawn reprisals from Hezbollah in Lebanon, Yemen's Ansar Allah, commonly known as the Houthi movement, and Iraqi paramilitary groups. Meanwhile, Israel has begun waging war on Lebanon. It's killed Hezbollah's leader, yada, yada. We already told you that stuff. So, yeah, Iraq, the resistance, yes, we're down for the clown. The Israeli military and the actual political people, not so much. Kind of reminds you of William Wallace and the Scottish noblemen who basically turned their backs on him and the progress that he was making. Willie Bragg in the house. Greetings to you, good sir. Yeah, so and Israel is starting to fuck around really bad. And I put a post on yesterday, on the tweeters yesterday. I said, if you're looking for World War III and want it, this is how you get World War III. On the real, as some kids still say. Israel attacks targets in and around Russian airbase in western Syria. Now you're fucking with the Russians. All right, Israel has been attacking virtually all its neighbors on a near daily basis. This is from Jason Ditz at the antiwar.com, by the way. Be sure you're checking out that site. A lot of good information. That's where we get a lot of ours from. Israel's been attacking virtually all its neighbors on a nearly daily basis to the point the full-scale regional war looms. Now Israel looks to be picking fights beyond the region, targeting Russia's regional presence in Syria. On Tuesday, an Iranian cargo plane arrived in Latakia with humanitarian aid for the hundreds of thousands of Lebanese fleeing the Israeli ground invasion. The aid was ultimately delivered to a warehouse in the city of Jabla near the Russian air base of Hemim. That's a lot of M's in there. Come on, don't name shit with all them M's. Come on. Early yesterday, the warehouse became a primary target for Israeli strikes when dozens of missiles were fired at it and the area nearby. Russian air defenses were activated and reportedly knocked some of the missiles and drones down while others reached their targets. Russia has long warned Israel to keep its air incursions out of western Syria with its Russian air assets. To date, this has been enough to keep Israel focused on Syria's south and east, but apparently no longer. Israeli media speculates the Iranian flight contained ammunition or explosives, not just aid. Right. They probably had Hamas in there too. Reports of explosions in the area following the Israeli drone attacks have only added to this belief. Israel has not officially commented on what it is targeting, nor has Russia commented on the matter, although Russia is unlikely to accept Israeli attacks in and around their bases going forward. As a matter of fact, Russia urges its citizens to get the fuck out of Dodge. Israel immediately. Russia has urged its citizens to leave Israel immediately following the escalating military tensions with both Hezbollah and Iran. Yesterday, Anatoly Viktorov, Moscow's ambassador to Tel Aviv, recommended that Russian nationals depart Israel without delay. In remarks to the Russian news agency TASS, Viktorov highlighted the worsening situation in the region and reiterated his advice against traveling to Israel. He noted that some airlines are still operating scheduled flights and encouraged Russian citizens to take advantage of this opportunity. We advise our citizens currently in Israel to seriously consider leaving the area. Yeah. So boom, boom, boom. That out go the lights. That's the song say. And, if you want to start picking a fight with Russia, I'm pretty sure, we've all seen war games. We've all seen Red Dawn. We know how that shit ends. And it turns out that before he was killed, the Hezbollah leader was trying to actually agree to a truce. I guess somebody didn't like that. This is from Middle East Eye. Nasrallah and Netanyahu agreed to a truce before Israel assassinated Hezbollah leader, according to a report. Lebanese Foreign Minister Abdallah Abu Habib has said in an interview with CNN that both Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and Israeli Prime Minister and fuckface Benjamin Netanyahu had agreed to a temporary truce just before Israel killed Nasrallah in a massive airstrike in Beirut. The U.S. also agreed on the Biden-Macron statement that calls for the implementation of a 21-day ceasefire, Abu Habib told CNN's Christina Mampour. And they told us that Mr. Netanyahu agreed on this, and so we also got the agreement of Hezbollah on that. You know what has happened since then? Abu Habib, who is currently in New York following September's UN General Assembly, said the agreement to the truce was confirmed before Israel launched a massive airstrike on Beirut's southern suburbs, killing Nasrallah and wiping out entire buildings. Before Israel killed Nasrallah, the U.S. and France said last Wednesday they were releasing a statement urging for a 21-day temporary truce between Hezbollah and Israel. After a week of Israel launching escalatory airstrikes on Lebanon, U.S. officials said that both parties had been communicating regarding the statement and were confident a truce would be reached. However, the next day, Netanyahu publicly rejected the truce, and on Friday, Israel killed Nasrallah. The revelation from Abu Habib could provide insight into how Israel killed Nasrallah, who has survived multiple Israeli assassination attempts over the decades. Another report from Reuters published on Wednesday said that Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, sent a messenger to warn Nasrallah that Israel was planning to assassinate him. That messenger, senior Iranian commander Abbas Nilfaroshan, was also killed in the Israeli strike on September 27th. So that just tells you right there, Bibi's not interested in peace. He wants peace. He wants a peace. In fact, he wants all pieces of Lebanon, and we'll take out anybody and anybody. And what's the United States do? Money, please. Money, please. Like Israel's a fucking stripper, and the United States is like, woohoo, woohoo, genocide is sexy, baby. And these Israeli pilots, though, they're a little bit nervous because, after wars end, then there's usually some sort of justice served, or there should be, and that means war crimes. War crimes, war crimes, war crimes. So pilots in Israeli squadron that killed Nasrallah feared war crimes prosecutions. Pilots in the Israeli squadron, which carried out the Beirut airstrike that killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, previously took part in anti-government protests over concerns that judicial reforms could lead to military personnel being prosecuted for war crimes. Last Friday's massive airstrike, which Israel said targeted Hezbollah's underground headquarters, flattened 4 residential buildings in the Lebanese capital's southern suburb of Daria. More than 1,000 people have been killed, according to the Lebanese health ministry, since Israel stepped up airstrikes earlier this month, while more than 1.2 million people have been displaced. Early Friday, Israeli fighter jets carried out further massive strikes in Beirut in a wave of attacks. The raid, which killed Nasrallah, codenamed Operation New Order by the Israeli Air Force. Operation New Order, really? It couldn't be Operation Joy Division. Could be Operation Echo and the Bunny Man. It was carried out by the 69th Giggity Squadron. Pilots in the 69th Giggity Squadron previously played a key role in protests against the Israeli government in March last year amid warnings that the proposed judicial reforms could expose military personnel to prosecution at the International Criminal Court. 37 out of the squadron's 40 reserve pilots said that they would not take part in a training exercise in protest at what critics of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's far-right coalition described as a judicial coup. Senior reservists expressed concerns that the reforms, by undermining the independence and legitimacy of the judicial system, could leave military personnel liable to investigation and prosecution for war crimes by the ICC. And not to mention those TikTok videos that they've been making, gleefully talking about murdering children. What's up, Teresa? Good morning. All of a sudden the borders become a priority. Sure, it's election season. But yeah, so if there is any justice in the world, and I doubt it, but if there is any justice, there's going to be a lot of people at The Hague on trial. But if we keep funding genocide, we're going to be complicit too, or at least these fuckheads that run this joint is. So Biden, when he wakes up from his naps, he loves nothing but war, even though he says he doesn't, but he does. This is from Dave DeCamp. Biden says U.S. and Israel are discussing strikes on Iranian oil facilities. Woo-wee! Let's blow up the Earl. President Biden said yesterday that the U.S. and Israel were discussing the possibility of striking Iran's oil facilities in retaliation for the Iranian missile barrage that targeted Israel on Tuesday, which was a response to multiple Israeli escalations. When asked by a reporter if he would support Israeli strikes on Iranian oil sites, Biden sleepily said, "We're discussing that. I may not be a little..." Anyway, the comment sent oil prices spiking. We'll talk about that in a second, too. Striking Iran's oil facilities is supported by the ultra-hawkish Senator Lindsey Graham. These oil refineries need to be hit and hit hard because that is the source of cash for the regime to penetrate their... All right, come on. Look, I know there's jokes about Lindsey Graham being gay, but my God, you're not helping yourself saying hit hard and penetrate. Jesus Christ. Wednesday, Biden said he wouldn't support Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, but the U.S. is vowing to ensure Tehran faces severe consequences. Israeli officials have told Axios that they plan to hit Iran hard and believe their attack could lead to a major regional war. Good morning, Gene. It's good to see you. You're listening while you take a break from planting. That's nice. Planting is delicious. Good for you. Options being considered besides striking oil facilities are targeting Iran's air defenses or carrying out a targeted assassination inside Iran Israeli officials have said that if Iran responds to their next attack, then any option is on the table, including strikes on nuclear facilities. Israel is coordinating its plans to attack Iran with the U.S. because it wants the U.S. to come to its defense in the event of another significant Iranian attack. It's like the little dog, the little chihuahua who has the pit bull behind him. So the little chihuahua is like, and then somebody, tries to bow up on that chihuahua, then the pit bull comes around. So that's great. They're pussies. If Israel wants to carry out a significant strike inside Iran, it may also need support from the U.S. military in doing so. It's a little hard on the voice, but it's worth the comedy. And how will those oil prices be affected, you may be asking? Well, how an oil price shock will affect American consumers. Look at them delicious gas prices. The likelihood of a full-scale regional war in the Middle East is higher as Israel continues to conduct its genocide in Gaza and escalate aggression in Lebanon. The rapid escalation in the Middle East has awakened the oil market, which had been stable until recently despite the ongoing wars in the region and had not experienced any major supply disruptions. The price of Brent crude, the international benchmark, rose to $67.03 per barrel before settling at $73.90. West Texas Intermediate, the U.S. benchmark, closed up 4.4% at $70.10 per barrel. Traders are concerned that an Israeli reaction to Iran's Operation True Promise 2 may target Iran's oil infrastructure, which exports around 1.7 million barrels of oil per day. The strike may also bring the area closer to a worst-case scenario for the oil market in which OPEC output would be hampered, and Tehran would close the Strait of Hormuz, a critical petroleum choke point, driving prices into the triple digits. According to Ben Hoff, global head of commodity strategy at Societe Generale, it's like a game of Jenga where the question really becomes, once you're at the 7th or 8th block, which one is it going to be that just ends up being a little bit too much and the whole thing collapses on itself? Jenga, Jenga, Jenga. That's right, Jenga. So, if you don't have a moral compass, maybe you got an economic compass, and you want to actually care about that, maybe. We told you about Israel's credit is about as bad as mine at this point, and now it's just getting worse. S&P downgrades Israel's credit rating. Economic uncertainty deepens. Right? Global credit rating agency S&P downgraded Israel's credit rating from A+ to A, moving the decision forward by 5 weeks amid escalations with Hezbollah, which the agency cautioned could result in an all-scale war, reported the Israeli Net on or Ynet on Wednesday. I'm not quite sure how to say if it's Ynet or is Yenet. I'm going to say Ynet. According to Ynet, even though the downgrade was determined before Iran's response on Tuesday, S&P cited the need for an earlier release due to heightened geopolitical tensions. The unscheduled announcement was prompted by the significant increase in Israel's geopolitical and security risks, the report stated. S&P also cautioned that the ongoing war on Gaza and escalating confrontations on the northern front, including Israel's failed attempts to launch a ground invasion in Lebanon, could persist into 2025, increasing the likelihood of retaliatory actions. Consequently, the agency adjusted Israel's economic forecast, predicting 0% growth in 2024 and 2.2% in 2025. Hey, Liana, good to see you. And Props here, too. What's up, buddy? Biden claims in a recent interview that storm victims have everything they need and are happy. Yeah, I saw that. That's $750. Come on, that's going to be a lot. They're going to party on that shit. The agency also forecasts a fiscal deficit of 9% of GDP for this year, exceeding the government's target of 6.6% and 6% for next year. This move by S&P follows a downgrade from Moody's a few days ago. We talked to you about that, which lowered Israel's credit rating by 2 levels to bad 1. So, because they're sheep, I guess. I don't know how that works. I'm not a business person. I got business, but, I don't know how much business. Wait, is that it? Okay, yeah. There was a little bit of business in Sweden. A little bit of excitement around the Israeli embassy. 2 Swedish teens are held in custody over blasts near Israeli embassy in Copenhagen. 2 Swedish teenagers were jailed yesterday in pretrial detention in connection with 2 pre-dawn explosions in the vicinity of the Israeli embassy in Copenhagen a day earlier. Prosecutors said investigators were establishing whether the motive could be a terror attack. No one was injured in the blasts on early Wednesday in a neighborhood with several foreign diplomatic missions, though the nearby Jewish school was closed following the explosions. The pair, who cannot be identified under a court order, were ordered held for 27 days. They face preliminary charges of possessing illegal weapons and carrying 5 hand grenades. Yikes. 2 of the grenades blew up when the suspects threw them at a house near the embassy, prosecutor Soren Harbo said. This was pretty close to the Israeli embassy. Harbo said before Thursday's court hearing the explosives caused damage to a roof terrace of a nearby house. The diplomatic mission was not harmed. Thursday's hearing was held behind closed doors after the preliminary charges were read. Reporting from inside the courtroom, Danish broadcaster DR said the teenagers, aged 16 and 19, are suspected of acting in association and together with prior agreement with one or more perpetrators. Boom, boom, boom. Copenhagen getting some pop. Meanwhile, in Sweden, it turned into vaudeville. I don't know if you guys know what vaudeville is, but back in the old days, they used to have these song and dance burlesque shows and stuff like that. And if people didn't like the act, they would throw like vegetables and stuff like that. Well, according to Politico, they're bringing back an old tradition. Tomatoes lobbed at Sweden's foreign minister during parliamentary debate. Apparently, she's a carnivore. She doesn't like vegetables. Protesters threw a bag of tomatoes and red onions at Sweden's foreign minister during a debate at Stockholm's position on Israeli settlements in the West Bank yesterday, local media reported. Foreign Minister Maria Malmer Sternegard was returning to her seat after speaking at a parliamentary debate on why Sweden had abstained in the UN General Assembly vote on the legal consequences of Israel's occupation of the West Bank when a ruckus started in the public gallery, lawmaker Anne-Sophie Alm told the AFP. A bag containing the vegetables was thrown in Sternegard's direction, landing 2 rows behind her, the tabloid Aftonbladet reported. The minister fled the chamber when she heard the noise, and the debate was temporarily suspended. Dette Tyrants, good morning to you as well. It must be possible to have a parliamentary debate without having things thrown at you. It is fundamental to democratic discourse. People getting bombs thrown at them. I think tomatoes and onions is probably not bad. You can make a nice soup out of that. Sterner wrote in a text message to thanking all those who had offered their support in the aftermath. Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson condemned the incident. I am proud that Sweden has a competent and upright foreign minister who represents the government's line on the conflicts in the Middle East. No one should be allowed to threaten her or throw objects at her. We have helped the security guards to remove people from the scene. A police spokesperson said, adding that 2 women aged 45 and a man aged 35 were suspected of disrupting the debate. Apparently they were farmers and just kind of picked them out of the thing before they left for the day. I'm making that up. I don't know if they were farmers, but throwing tomatoes and onions, man, that's old school. Ain't a waste of tomatoes and onions. If you're going to throw something, throw some shit at them, like the French, man. The French, when they protest, they'll get like truckloads of shit, dump them on the street. They don't give a fuck, right? A little good news out of all this business. The U.S. judge sides with pro-Palestinian student over canceled October 7th vigil. We told you about this earlier, I think last week or week before last. Federal judge ruled Tuesday that the University of Maryland cannot prevent students from holding a planned event October 7th, which is Monday, I believe, to mourn those massacred in Gaza. The students, part of the campus chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine, had reserved a room for the event in July. In August, university officials met with the group to express concerns and discuss the pressure they were facing to cancel it. On September 1st, the university's president banned all student-sponsored events for October 7th, allowing only school-sponsored events to proceed. The university justified its decision by citing security concerns. It's always about security, noting that officials had allegedly received death threats as news of the event spread. U.S. District Judge Peter Mesite ruled Tuesday that the University of Maryland likely violated the students' First Amendment rights by canceling the event. You think? Mesite noted that the university had alternative options to enhance security, such as hiring additional personnel or law enforcement, rather than outright canceling the event. That's censorship. They wanted to censor it. They don't want to spend money to to make anything safe. Not like it was going to be violence there. They just it was a vigil. Usually vigils are very peaceful. Meanwhile, in India, in what the fuck news, this is bizarre. India asks top court not to toughen penalties for marital rape. India's government has asked the country's top court not to toughen criminal penalties against marital rape during an ongoing case brought by a campaigner seeking to outlaw it. 2024, folks. The penal code introduced in the 19th century during British colonial rule of India explicitly states that, quote, sexual acts by a man with his own wife is not rape, unquote. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government enacted an overhauled code in July, which retains that clause despite the decade-long court challenge by activists seeking to make marital rape illegal. India's Interior Ministry filed an affidavit to the Supreme Court yesterday stating that while marital rape should result in penal consequences, the legal system should treat it more leniently than rape committed outside of marriage. A husband certainly does not have any fundamental right to violate the consent of his wife, the affidavit said, according to the Indian Express newspaper. However, attracting the crime in the nature of rape as recognized in India to the institution of marriage can be arguably considered to be excessively harsh. India's current penal code mandates a minimum 10-year sentence for those convicted of rape. The government statement said that marital rape was adequately addressed in existing laws, including a 2005 law protecting women from domestic violence. That law recognizes sexual abuse as a form of domestic violence, but does not prescribe any criminal penalties to the perpetrators. Another section of the penal code punishes broadly defined acts of cruelty by a husband against their wife with prison terms up to 3 years. 6% of Indian married women aged 18 and 49 have reported spousal sexual violence, according to the government's latest National Family Health Survey conducted from 2019 to 2021. In the world's most populous country, that implies more than 10 million women have been victims of sexual violence at the hands of their husbands. Nearly 18% of married women also feel they cannot say no if their husbands want sex, according to the survey. Divorce remains taboo across much of India, with only 1 in every 100 marriages ending in dissolution, often owing to family and social pressure to sustain unhappy marriages. Chronic backlogs in India's criminal justice system mean some cases take decades to reach a resolution, and the case pushing for the criminalization of marital rape has made painfully slow progress. It was referred to the Supreme Court after a 2-judge bench in the Delhi High Court issued a split verdict in May 2022. One judge in that case ruled that while one may disapprove of a husband forcibly having sex with his wife, that cannot be equated with the act of ravishing by a stranger. Holy fucking shit. So, as long as you're married, but if you're not married, we're not doing that shit. Yeah, so fuck India and that bullshit. I don't care if you're Indian watching this or not. And you agree, if you agree with that, you can go fuck yourself. And yeah. So meanwhile, Google is playing hardball with New Zealand. Google says it will stop linking to New Zealand news if proposed new law pass. Google said it will stop linking to New Zealand news articles and ditch the agreements it has with local news organizations if the country's government goes ahead with a law to force tech giants to pay a fair price for content that appears on their feeds. Oh, God, a fair price? What are you, a communist? The New Zealand government in July confirmed it would progress legislation started by the previous Labour Party-led government. Oh, Labor. That ensures fair revenue sharing between operators of digital platforms and news media entities. The proposed legislation is still in review and is likely to see changes, including some to bring it more in line with Australian legislation. Caroline Rainsford, Google New Zealand country director, said in a blog post that if the bill as it currently stands becomes law, Google will be forced to make significant changes to its products and investments. We'd be forced to stop linking to news content on Google Search, Google News, or Discover surfaces in New Zealand and discontinue our current commercial agreements and ecosystem support with New Zealand news publishers, Rainsford said. Google, which is owned by Alphabet Incorporated, is concerned that bill is contrary to the idea of the internet being open, that it will be harmful to small publishers, and that the uncapped financial exposure provides business uncertainty. New Zealand Minister for Media and Communications Paul Goldsmith said he was considering the range of views in the sector. We are still in the consultation phase and will make announcements in due course, he said in a statement. My official and I have met with Google on a number of occasions to discuss their concerns, and I will continue to do so. Although minority government coalition partner ACT does not support the legislation, it is likely to find enough cross-party support to pass once finalized. Australia introduced a law in 2021 that gave the government power to make internet companies negotiate content supply deals with media outlets. A review released by the Australian government in 2022 found it largely worked. Yeah. So Google saying, what? We like our money. We want to keep it. Speaking of Aussies, one of our favorite Australians, Julian Assange, of course, freed from that UK prison, and he expressed some concerns that he had during a public speech that he gave this week. And now a parliamentary assembly of the Council of Europe is declaring that he was a political prisoner. I know you're like, well, of course he was a political prisoner, but, no one body is actually making it official. This is from The Dissenter there with Kevin Gostola. So if you can subscribe to him, if you got the bucks to do that, that's fine. Or at least share out his stuff. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, or PACE, approved a resolution that states WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was prosecuted and detained in the United Kingdom as a political prisoner. I'm not saying that name. I'm just calling him PSC. PSC, the General Rapporteur for Political Prisoners, and an Icelandic parliamentarian who serves on the Committee of Legal Affairs and Human Rights, drafted the resolution, which passed by a vote of 88 to 13. The resolution urged the United States to reform the Espionage Act and make its application conditional to the presence of a malicious intent to harm the national security of the United States or to aid a foreign power, and exclude the application of the Espionage Act to publishers, journalists, and whistleblowers, especially those who try to inform the public about war crimes, torture, and illegal surveillance. Assange, his wife Stella Assange, and WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Kristen Hrafnsson were present for the debate and vote on the resolution. They cheered, clapped, and thanked the Assembly. The debate and vote on the resolution came after Assange testified before PACE's Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights this week. It was his first public testimony since he accepted a plea deal that ended the U.S. Justice Department's political case against him. PACE's consideration of Assange's case was part of a wider examination by the Assembly of the increased threats that journalists and whistleblowers face in Europe. A fact-finding visit to the UK by Evarsditur occurred while Assange was still detained at Belmarsh, that UK prison. If you look at the definition of a political prisoner, Julian Assange and his case fulfills this definition. They told the Assembly he was convicted for engaging in acts of journalism. This is a clear instance of a politically motivated incarceration. Yes, so he was. But what does that mean, right? Is he he was a political prisoner? But more journalists are going to get arrested or killed. Especially if you're in Israel, they do not like truth tellers down there. Kind of a bittersweet story here in domestic news. U.S. federal jury convicts 3 officers in fatal Tyree Nichols beating. I may have been covering that story, or following that story, I should say. 3 former police officers have been convicted on federal charges related to the fatal beating of Tyree Nichols in Memphis, Tennessee, an incident in 2023 that sparked nationwide protests and calls for law enforcement reform. All 3 were found guilty of witness tampering when the verdict was delivered on Thursday, but they were cleared of the most severe charge, violating the 29-year-old Nichols' civil rights by causing death. They murder. They didn't get him from murder, is what they're trying to say there. One officer, Demetrius Haley, was nevertheless convicted of violating Nichols' civil rights, causing bodily harm, as well as witness tampering. Federal witness tampering charges carry a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. Sentencing is anticipated to take place in January. A win is a win. They're all going to jail. Rodney Wells, Nichols' stepfather, told the AP news agency outside the courthouse. Haley and the 2 other ex-officers, Tadarius Bean and Justin Smith, were among the 5 members of a special police unit accused of beating Nichols to death on January 7th, 2023. Yeah, that's a case of, well, it's better than nothing. Yeah, but still, it was fucking murder. Meanwhile, in Rick's neck of the woods, they're getting tough with insulin makers down there. As Texas Attorney General sues insulin makers and pharmacy middlemen over high costs. They should go to jail. The Texas Attorney General has sued leading insulin manufacturers and pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, accusing them of collaborating to inflate the cost of insulin. Texas AG Ken Paxton's office said yesterday it had sued insulin makers Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi. The office had also sued PBMs including CVS Caremark, Cigna's Express Scripts, and United Health's Optum RX, who act as intermediaries in negotiating drug prices and coverage. The lawsuit targets both insulin manufacturers and PBMs. A previous action by U.S. antitrust regulators only targeted PBMs. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission in September sued the same PBMs, accusing them of steering diabetes patients towards higher-priced insulin in order to secure millions of dollars in rebates from pharmaceutical companies. At the time, the FTC had not sued the insulin manufacturers, but had criticized their role in what it called a broken system. So Texas doing something right for a change, and we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, Duke Energy, who's having their own problems in North Carolina with lack of equipment in order to fix the infrastructure there after Helene, is now in a shit pickle over other health issues going on there. So this is from Fox 8 out of North Carolina. Duke Energy sued over alleged health issues from coal ash in North Carolina. Duke Energy is now at the center of a lawsuit based out of Mooresville. The lawsuit alleges the company played a role in significant health issues linked to coal ash contamination in Mooresville. It claims the hazardous materials, including arsenic and heavy metals from coal ash, have been improperly used underneath residential and commercial properties in the 1990s and early 2000s. Attorneys said the practice contributed to alarming increases in cancer rates and other health problems within the community. The lawsuit calls for federal authorities to take action and also seeks compensation for affected residents. Duke Energy said the sale of the ash complied with state regulations, acknowledging that some regulations have changed. The company said they don't know of any evidence backing the claims made in the lawsuit. What? We don't know shit. Duke Energy emphasized a 2019 report from the state health department regarding an increase in thyroid cancer between 1995 and 2016. That report states that after hearing concerns from the community, the health department examined the literature for a potential link between alleged coal ash contamination and thyroid cancer. Duke Energy claims, based on the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services report, that there are no published studies supporting an association between coal ash exposure and thyroid cancer, yet state officials emphasized that this report was not a research study and no data was collected on potential environmental exposures. Therefore, no conclusions can be drawn from this report, officials wrote. So, Duke. What are you doing, Duke? North Carolina's got enough problems. I found this too. This is from the ES Independent in Arkansas. Fairly interesting report here. Water district that refuses to fluoridate being fined $500 per week. Only one water district in Arkansas serving more than 5,000 customers has refused to add fluoride to its water system as required by a state mandate. The Ozark Mountain Regional Public Water Authority, or which serves part of Boone, Newton, and Searcy counties. As a result, the Water Authority has been fined $500 per week by the Arkansas Department of Health. Board Chair Andy Anderson said on September 30th that he had just opened the latest bill from ADH. The fines now add up to $113,000. Despite that financial pressure, the is standing firm against fluoridation. The board is adamant, Anderson said. We're not going to put it in the water. The customers we sell wholesale water to adamantly oppose the mandate and remain opposed to it. We've got several smaller systems that had fluoride levels above the contaminant levels allowed, and the ADH said they had to do something, so we banded together to create the OMRPWA in 2009. Then the Arkansas legislature came along in 2011 and said we would have to start adding fluoride. Every customer said they would refuse to pay their bills if fluoride was added. Anderson said they have some very knowledgeable customers who understand fluoride is harmful to humans, other animals, and the environment. We are in the Buffalo River watershed, Anderson said. Some environmental people didn't want wastewater contaminated with fluoride going into the Buffalo River. About 99% of water used by consumers is not for drinking, but is used for washing clothes, bathing, watering the lawn, etc. In Arkansas, the only chemicals put into water are supposed to be those to treat the water. Fluoride is added to the water to supposedly treat the people. That is medication without consent. In Arkansas, the people did not get to vote on Act 197. It is a mandate from the legislature. From the time that bill was introduced and signed into law was only 11 days. Common people who don't live in Little Rock didn't know to even go up there to speak in opposition to the proposed legislation. The legislature is influenced by the hired lobbyist. Of course, it's always a lobbyist. Just rushed it through. If it had gone to a vote of the people, I am 99% sure it would have not passed. The lobbyists control the legislature. They tell legislators, scratch my back and I'll give you donations to your campaign. I am close to a former lobbyist who said that if he was given enough money, he could get any bill passed, good or bad, he said. Anderson said the chemical added as fluoride to drinking water is a hazardous waste byproduct of the aluminum and phosphate fertilizer industries. If those industries had to dispose of it otherwise, it would cost them a lot of money. But they can repackage it, sell it to water systems, make money off of it, and use the people to dispose of hazardous waste, Anderson said. It comes from being scrubbed from smokestacks. You can't put this hazardous waste into streams or into the air, but miraculously, you can put it in the human body, and it is no longer a hazardous waste. Desert Mantis, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. Anderson said their water authority was heartened by a recent federal court ruling that EPA must regulate fluoride as a neurotoxin. He is disappointed that dentists continue to push water fluoridations. Dentists don't have any expertise on the impact of fluoridated water on the brain health of children, Anderson said. Dentists can see you in their office. If you want to put fluoride treatment on your teeth, that's okay, but to put it in the water and make it one size fits all is unethical. Act 197 required medication without consent. Act 197 is unjust because the people directly affected did not get to vote on it. Now, the National Toxicology Program, whose findings were used in the lawsuit, has concluded there is no safe level of fluoride in drinking water. That's right. Poor Dirt Farmer PDF. Good morning, sir. It's good to see you. And good on them too, right? They don't want that shit in their water. That's what the customers said. We don't want fluoride in the water. And the legislature said, tough titty, said the kitty, when the milk went dry, you're going to get it anyway. Didn't let the people vote on it. And that's why we need, and our buddy Roger Metters would probably agree with this too. In fact, I know he would, that you need these state ballot initiatives to address stuff like that. So if you don't want shit in your water, you should be able to not have it in there. And good on these people. I know they're getting fined $500 a week, but they said they're not going to put it in there because their customers don't want it. So, you know, they could have easily put it in there, but they didn't. And finally, more environmental news. Court rules planned plutonium pits for new nukes violate the U.S. law. This is by Olivia Rosane. In what advocates call a major win for frontline communities and the rule of law, a U.S. District Court judge ruled Monday that the federal government could not move forward with producing plutonium pits, the heart and trigger of a nuclear bomb, at two proposed sites in New Mexico and South Carolina. Like South Carolina needs any more hardship. Instead, Judge Mary Geiger Lewis agreed with a coalition of nonprofit community groups that the Department of Energy and the National Nuclear Security Administration violated the National Environmental Policy Act by failing to fully consider alternatives to producing the pits at New Mexico's Los Alamos National Laboratory and South Carolina's Savannah River site. Now, the federal government must conduct a full environmental impact statement of how pit production would work at sites across the U.S. This is a significant victory that will ensure NEPA's goal of public participation is satisfied, attorney for the plaintiffs Ben Cunningham of the South Carolina Environmental Law Project said in a statement. Public scrutiny is especially important because the activities at issue here, by their very nature, result in the production of dangerous weapons and extensive amounts of toxic and radioactive waste. I hope the public will seize the upcoming opportunity to review and comment on the federal agency's assessment. Making plutonium pits means working with extremely hazardous and radioactive materials, Nuclear Watch New Mexico, one of the groups behind the suit, pointed out. As of 2018, the government had planned to produce at least 80 pits a year by 2030, 30 or more in New Mexico and 50 or more in South Carolina. Yet these pits are not intended to maintain the U.S.'s existing nuclear weapons stockpile. Instead, they would be for future experimental weapons that could not even be tested without violating the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. What's more, making the pits would cost U.S. taxpayers over $60 billion over the next 3 decades, and the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, found that the NNSA has not made reliable cost estimates for production at the two proposed sites. The DOE and NNSA have been on the GAO's, that's a lot of letters, high-risk list for project mismanagement and cost overruns for more than 30 years, says Jay Coughlin, the executive director of Nuclear Watch New Mexico. Nevertheless, these agencies think they can proceed with their most expensive and complex project ever without required public analysis and credible cost estimates. He continued, public scrutiny and formal comment under the National Environmental Policy Act have proven time and again to improve public safety and save taxpayers' money. A nationwide programmatic environmental impact statement on expanded plutonium pit production will hold DOE and NNSA accountable for just that. It'll also give local communities a chance to have a say in potentially dangerous projects being implemented near their homes. The plaintiffs were composed mostly of frontline groups: Savannah River Site Watch, Nuclear Watch New Mexico, Tri-Valley Communities Against a Radioactive Environment, and the Gulagichi Sea Island Coalition. So yeah, so people are standing up about these environmental threats. And the hubris of the government and these local governments, like the state governments, thinking that they can impose their will on these people. They're starting to get a little bit of a kick in the ass there, and that's good. We like to see that. So more, please. Meanwhile, in our propaganda watch, Facebook and Instagram. Will you motherfuckers ever learn? Probably not.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
So fuckface, Facebook, Instagram restrict use of red triangle emoji over Palestinian Resistance Association. Yes, they're banning triangles now, folks. Rhombus and trapezoids are next. According to a report, American multinational technology conglomerate Meta is restricting the use of the upside-down red triangle emoji, which has become a broader symbol of Palestinian resistance. Meta is restricting the emoji on its Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp platforms, The Intercept reported yesterday after reviewing internal content moderation materials. Since the beginning of Israel's genocidal war on Gaza, the Islamic resistance movement Hamas has regularly released footage of its successful strikes on Israeli military positions with red triangles superimposed above targeted soldiers and armor, the report said. The use of the red triangle emoji has expanded online since October last year, becoming a widely used icon for people expressing their sentiments in favor of Palestine and against Israel. Social media users use the emoji in their posts, usernames, and profiles as a badge of solidarity and protest against Israel's crime against Palestinians. The symbol has become so popular that the Israeli military has used it in its own propaganda. How about that? In November, an Israeli military video that warned, "Our triangle is stronger than yours," Abu Obaida, addressing Hamas's spokesperson. Our triangle is stronger than yours. What the fuck? Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, has determined that the upside-down triangle emoji is a proxy for support for Hamas, according to internal policy guidelines obtained by The Intercept. Meta is deleting the triangle that may be followed by further disciplinary action from the company, depending on how severely it assesses its use. According to the policy materials, the ban covers contexts in which Meta decides a, quote, user is clearly posting about the conflict and it is reasonable to read the red triangle as a proxy for Hamas and it is being used to glorify, support, or represent Hamas's violence. Yeah, Hamas's violence. So Meta being a mega asshole. And of course, Facebook is just trash anyway. So I know some of you still use it to keep up with family and friends, and I do to a certain extent, but exactly. The watermelon is going to be next, Desert. Everybody knows that. And that's going to piss off Southern people because, we love us some watermelon down south. And you're going to fuck with our emoji. There's going to be hell to pay. We told you earlier that Israel was being a little shy about all the shit that's blowing up around them. Well, turns out that's true. Israel censors reporting on military sites hit by Iran, obscuring extent of damage. After Iran launched waves of ballistic missiles across Israel Tuesday evening with video footage showing many of them hitting their targets, Israel closed off several military zones and barred the publication of reporting on where missiles hit the ground. The censorship from Israel made it difficult to assess the full damage from Iran's strikes, with both the U.S. and Israel sending mixed messages regarding the size and impact of Tehran's attack. The Wall Street Journal reported on Wednesday that an initial Israeli assessment of the attack showed minor damage to military bases. Of course, Wall Street Journal's a cuck for Empire too. The Iranian attack hit the Nevatim air base in the Negev desert, where Israel has placed some F-35 fighter jets, but Israel's military declined to share with the journal the extent of the damage to the airbase. Military said it didn't want to give information to Iran to help that could help Tehran understand how much damage its attack caused. Several missiles were also located near the Dead Sea, where Israeli nuclear facilities are located. It wasn't clear whether they were intercepted by Israel or the U.S., according to the report. One missile hit in the vicinity of a school in the town of Gadara, with photos of the aftermath showing a massive crater in the ground and major structural damage to nearby buildings. Israel said that its military and a coalition of allies, including the U.S. and UK, intercepted most of the missiles. However, video footage online showed numerous missiles landing inside Israel and exploding without being intercepted by Israel's Shit Dome missile defense system. The attacks caused 2 injuries inside Israel, while 1 Palestinian was killed by shrapnel in the city of Jericho in the occupied West Bank. U.S. National Security Advisor and puppet to the regime, Jake Sullivan, said during a brief moment with reporters Tuesday that the Iranian attack was both a significant escalation by Tehran and also ineffective. In short, based on what we know at this point, this attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective. The word fog of war was invented for a situation like this. This is a fluid situation. Yeah. So, and also, too, it doesn't say here in this article, but apparently, like on Google Earth or one of these online map programs, they said that Israel had intentionally put like digital fog on the maps or something to keep you from seeing how fucked up they are. Yeah. So, but Israel, defending itself, and of course they're the most moral army on the planet, according to sources. That sources being those lying motherfuckers. And Italy, liar, liar, pants on fire to these guys too. Italian media contradict foreign minister on Rome's involvement in the Gaza conflict. A new report by Italian media has found that Italy's state-owned defense and security company, Leonardo, has continued to export weapons to Israel, refuting Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, who had repeatedly stated that Rome had sent no arms to the Zionist regime after October 7th of last year. And here's that report.
A recent report published by the monthly magazine Altra Economia has highlighted Italy's involvement in the Gaza carnage. Despite Rome having declared on numerous occasions it had stopped sending weapons to Israel since October 7 last year. The report mentioned that Leonardo, an Italian company controlled by Italy's Ministry of Economy and Finance, has admittedly supplied weapon components and logistics to Israel in 2024. More specifically, Leonardo has been providing logistic support to the Air Force's M346 jet trainers it had sold Israel 9 years ago. Among other things, the Italian weapons firm has also supplied Tel Aviv with protection systems and tactical radars mounted on armored bulldozers used in Gaza to help raze Palestinian homes and infrastructures to the ground. According to the report by the Italian magazine, the country's foreign ministry, contrary to what Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani has repeatedly stated, has authorized the transfer of weapons from Leonardo to Israel over the past months.
Sono colpito soprattutto dall'ipocrisia.
The one thing that strikes me the most is the hypocrisy that guides the Italian, the European, the US government officers when they urge peace, a ceasefire in Gaza, in Lebanon, while they continue to provide weapons to Israel. When I hear Minister Tajani say a truce is needed, what is he exactly talking about?
On Wednesday, Italy's Foreign Minister Tajani addressed the lower house and Senate Foreign Affairs and Defense Committees following Iran's Operation True Promise 2 in response to the assassinations of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran in violation of Iran's sovereignty, and more recently General Abbas Nilforushan of the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps, who was martyred along with Hezbollah's leader Sayed Hassan Nasrallah. This is what Tajani had to say to journalists when asked about Israel's brutal attacks on Lebanon and Israel's non-compliance with international norms.
When there's nobody in Lebanon who guarantees the safety of Israelis on the other side of the border, attacking Hezbollah while it continues to launch rockets on Israel amounts to self-defense.
Italy is the third largest supplier of military equipment to Israel, following the US and Germany, contributing around 1% of Tel Aviv's total arms imports. Max Civilli, Press TV, Rome.
Yeah, so fuck Italy. Italy always doing some dumb shit anyway. Meanwhile, in Tanzania, they're suspending a media company there for saying bad things about Tanzania, I think. So Tanzania suspends media company's online platform for 30 days. This is from Africa News. Tanzania's communications regulator has suspended the online platforms of Wananchi Communications Limited, accusing the media company of publishing content that violates the country's regulations. The Tanzania Communications Regulatory Authority announced Wednesday that the company's online content licenses will be suspended for 30 days, citing material published on October 1st that allegedly harmed the nation's image. The TCRA referenced the online content regulations of 2020, stating that the content posted on Wananchi's social media platforms disrupted, quote, unity, peace, and national harmony. In other words, they told the truth to people and they got pissed off. While the specific content was not detailed, it is believed to relate to an animated video posted by the Citizen, one of Wananchi's publications. The video depicted people expressing concerns about missing or murdered relatives. Yeah, you can't be asking about missing or murdered relatives. What's wrong with you? You're going to piss off everybody. I mean, the government. The video followed the discovery of an opposition's official body in Dar es Salaam in September, which heightened fears of targeted violence. Although the Citizen later removed the video and issued a statement explaining it had been misrepresented, the suspension still went ahead. Wananchi Communications, a subsidiary of Kenya's National Media Group, has said it will comply with the suspension. This move comes amid criticism of Tanzania's government for rolling back press freedoms despite earlier reforms under President Samia Suluhu Hassan. The government, however, denies these claims. Of course, the government denies these claims. It's the fucking government. That's their job, is to deny claims, especially when it makes them look bad. Finally, in our propaganda watch, I put this in here because there may be some legitimacy to this story, but a lot of kids, like the younger generations, like your Gen Alphas, right? Maybe some of your younger Gen Z folks, they're on the TikToks all the time, right? They're on their phones. What do you the beard's coming back. I said this at the beginning of the show. It's coming back. I'll be Santa Claus, but you gotta cut it even. Otherwise, you're gonna have patches. You don't want to look like crack Santa. Anyway, so kids you get their information from online, from social media, right? And a lot of them are saying fuck war, and we can't have that. So the who was really good during the pandemic about not being propagandist motherfuckers, they're calling for legislation against smartphones. States should consider limiting the use of gadgets by young people, a health policy official has said. Aren't these the same people that changed the definition of vaccine? I could be wrong. Countries should impose restrictions on the use of smartphones and other handheld devices to reduce the harm they cause to young people, reduce the education to young people, a senior figure at the World Health Organization has said. Dr. Natasha Asparty Muscat, I don't know, Azzoparty, that looks like Asparty to me, WHO director of the Division of Country Health Policies and Systems, compared the excessive use of communication devices to tobacco addiction. Maybe we need to think about where it is appropriate to use digital devices, and maybe it's also time to start thinking about places where certain digital devices should not be used, she told Politico magazine on the sidelines of the European Health Forum in Gastein, Austria on Wednesday. The measures could include age limits and no-go zones similar to the bans on smoking in certain areas, she said. As with anything else, you can use these tools well and effectively. Ass Party mascot. I'm going to just call her Ass Party mascot. But we have to be careful because we have a portion of the population who are reporting problematic use. What portion of the population is that? The government? The experts stressed that in certain cases, gadgets take a toll on mental health while undermining education and productivity in the workforce. Because they're starting to learn that their world is shit and they're not taking the bullshit anymore. The evidence needs to be collated systematically, and then we need to see what is likely to work and what is the approach that we want to take. Ass Party mascot said, adding that it is quite clear that we can't delay taking actions and decisions. Health professionals and government officials in many countries have expressed concern over impact of electronic devices on children, especially given the almost ubiquitous use of smartphones and social media among teenagers. European Commissioner and the lady who was after the 101 Dalmatians president, Ursula von der Leyen, has vowed to draw up measures aimed at combating excessive screen time and addictive practices prevalent in the digital age. My heart bleeds when I read about young people harming themselves or even taking their lives because of online abuse, she said in January. In July, several nations are taking measures to reduce children's screen time, and countries including the Netherlands, Hungary, France, Greece, and England have banned the use of smartphones in classrooms. All right, so some of you who are parents are like, yeah, we got to limit this stuff, because, yeah, you could be just using it too much. But that's the parent's job. That's not the government's job, all right? That's the parent's job. The parents have responsibility for these children. Now, some of these parents are shit parents, all right? Let's be fair. And we'll use a phone or a iPad or whatever as a babysitter and just not pay attention to the children. But some of these kids are pretty fucking smart, and they see stuff that this news that they're not seeing on the mainstream media. Well, they're not watching the mainstream media. That's the old people watch that shit. They're watching stuff on the TikToks. They're watching stuff on the Grams, that their friends are posting, that are independent journalists are using these sites. So, like I said, if you're a parent and you don't want your kid to be on the phone all the time, yeah, I can respect that. That's your kid. You got to raise your kid the way you're going to raise your kid. But, the government doing that shit, no fucking way. Yeah, Von der Crazy is an authoritarian. Fuck that bitch. Going after 101 Dalmatians. What's her name? Cruella de Vil. She is. All she needs is that white streak in her hair like Tulsi has, and then she'll be Cruella. All right, well, all that gloom and doom, it finally leads us to our kicker today. A little fun stuff here. India, we cajoled as being a bunch of assholes when it comes to women. Apparently, their scientists are doing some good stuff. And we love some space news around here. This youngster gets his info from Mornin Extra. You are so sweet. Thank you so much. And tell your friends. If you don't have any friends, be a better person and get some friends. And then tell them. So India has approved the first Venus space probe. Giggity. They decided to bypass Uranus with the probe and go to Venus. The South Asian country has been ramping up its space exploration programs lately, having landed on the moon's southern pole last year. Pole, probe, giggity. India's space agency has announced plans to send a satellite to Venus in early 2028 as part of New Delhi's ambitious $147.1 million program to study the solar system, including the moon and Mars. The Indian Space Research Organization announced that the Venus probe is one of 2 significant missions that have just been approved by the Indian government. The other mission, Chandrayaan-4, aims to collect lunar samples and return them to Earth. India has previously launched 3 missions to the moon as part of its Chandrayaan series in 2008, 2019, and last year, with last year's probe establishing the country as the first ever to land on the lunar South Pole, joining an exclusive club of nations that have landed equipment there. In 2014, India also launched a mission to Mars. India's planetary exploration program is driven by comparative planetology to study the similarities and differences between planets and natural satellites, as well as exploring the diversities of sun-planet interactions. ISRO noted the Venus mission will provide a unique global data set for future science missions, as previous probes have had limited coverage in either the South Polar region or equatorial belt. Despite numerous space missions globally, Venus retains its enigma. And just a little historical note on that. Back in the day, back in the 80s, the Russians actually sent probes there to Venus. If you're not familiar with Venus, is like Venus is hot as fuck, right? Like 700, 800 degrees, and the atmospheric pressure there is so dense that it's just like going to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. It's just like if you got something flimsy there, it's just going to be crushed instantly. But they sent probes there. Finally got one where they took some pictures and got some sound, and it sounded like hell. And it looked like hell. So if you die and you think, if you think there's a hell when you die, you're probably going to Venus. I mean, let's just be real there. But speaking of space and all that stuff, there's a new show coming up tonight on the YouTubes, and it is Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show, starring Chuck the Alien. It's going to be on YouTube and Rumble tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time. And coming up this weekend, this asshole's back. It's The Secret Show, starring yours truly. That's going to be Saturday, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. The chickens will be back. All kinds of crazy bullshit will be happening. So come hang out with us. We'll be on YouTube, Rockfin, and Rumble, just like we are here. And tonight, I think Willie's going to be on at 8 p.m. Eastern. I believe so. 7:55, kind of. And, of course, Around the World with Dee and Friends at 9 p.m. Eastern as well. So if you're watching on the YouTube, keep both tabs open. Give them both some views. And it should be fun. Yes, that show does sound silly. And it's probably going to be silly. I know the guy that does it. And it's going to be wild and fun. Providing entertainment in this space, where it all seems like it's just gloom and doom all the time. And, there's news that we need to know. And it's not going to be good news all the time. So a lot of times, and so we have shows that also, like my show, like ExtraBulla Live, we have people on, we talk to them, we have nice conversations. And then The Secret Show is just silly, whatever, chickens, butt plugs, that kind of thing. Oh, you're not going to be on tonight, Willie? You're going to be on Sunday instead. Okay, so no Willie Bragg tonight. Look for him on Sunday instead. And look for us, again, like we said, Saturday night with The Secret Show. And this show will be back Monday, with more bad news that you need to know, unfortunately. I'm here to tell you about it. But at least it's not the mainstream media. Those assholes lie to you on the regular. So, and we try to tell you the truth around here when we get the truth. So if you like what you hear, if you're new, if you're just kind of lurking and you're like, man, I'm not quite sure about this, but I'll subscribe anyway. Just do that. So, like it, share it out, tell your friends. And we're not a preach to the choir kind of show. Yes, we like our peeps, our regulars, but, tell your friends that are outside of the bubble that, try to let them know that there's alternative media out there, that they don't have to watch MSNBC or Fox News or any of these bullshit corporate channels. There's folks out here like me and others who are trying to spread the gospel and the good works of independent journalism in this space. So, and if you can help us out financially, that's great. The links are down below. My buddy Kevin over at Black Bear News, he's making a good point and telling people, not if you're on Rockfin, don't donate to us on Rockfin right now, because Rockfin it's like you have to know the Elvish word for friend to know how to open the door to the money vault there, if you're donating there. So if you do Venmo or CashApp, or you could donate to this channel, that's fine, that's cool. It's a little bit easier to get to, and the money is put to good use to keep the show going. So that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to get rich. We're just trying to provide services of information and entertainment. That's the Ward Deer Entertainment way. That's what we do. So I love each and every one of you. I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy this nice fall weather, and if you're in parts of the country where you're literally underwater, if there's other folks in the area that can help you out, please help these folks, because the government sure as fuck ain't going to do anything for them, or for you, or for me, or for anybody else, unless you already have money, because that's how America works in 2024. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
This is City Alpha 5! Woo!
A damn good song, wasn't it, dog? You like that song? All right.
Soon.